A lot of people don't understand how they lose family homes because of how inheritance, or rather how interstate succession works in South Africa. And they often think there's a mistake somewhere, or kunento nje that doesn't make sense here. Sorry, I'm going to give you that same typical example because ngifuna ukuthi ihlale la kuwe engqondweni ne. Let's say you are married. And you are married to the spouse of yours and you have got 2 children. This is going to be a song we will sing together from now on. You are married, you've got 2 children. The both of you and your spouse decide we don't have to draft wills. I mean, we know we've got 2 kids. There's no one that can come into the situation. Plus, you don't think it's necessary to have a will. Now, one of you passes away. And for argument's sake, let us say what you have in this marriage is only a property worth 500,000 rand. Now, one of you passes away. Remember, there is no will. So what happens in that instance? First things first, you know that the other spouse who is living, surviving, is entitled to half of everything in this marriage. And we said how much is in this marriage? 500,000 rand. So the surviving spouse, uthola malini, 250,000. And then the other 250,000, egabani, is that of the spouse otheni who passed away. Kwenzakalani ngale 250,000 yalo oshonile? Because akanayo will, uthini umthetho. Now, because they don't have a will, the law says we are going to give the husband the whole of the 250,000. Remember, you guys have 2 kids. But the law says what? Okokuqala, they don't have a will, all right? And secondly, there's a spouse here. So what does the law say? It says we must give the spouse 250 grand. How much is left? Nothing. How much are the kids going to get? Nothing. Let's take it further. You now decide after you've lost your spouse, you want to remarry. And you remarry and the marriage is in community of property. And again, now in this instance, you are the one that passes away. And by then, let's say the value of the property that you and your new spouse have is, let's say, worth 550,000 rand. It has grown a bit. Now, what happens in this situation? You as the second parent of your children have now passed away. What does the situation require us to do? First question, is there a will here? We don't have it. Remember, the parents didn't think it's necessary to have it. Now, because there's no will, where do we start? First things first, you were married before you passed away. So you have your new wife who is entitled to what you have. So in this marriage right now, we've got 550,000 rand. So each should get 275,000 rand. So which means the surviving new spouse gets 275,000. And then what happens to the other 275,000? Remember, there is no will. And what does the law say? The law says we will give who what? You will give the spouse 250. Exactly. So now we take from that 275, we give the madam, the new wife, 250. How much is left? 25,000. The kids get 25,000. So in normal circumstances, what happens in that situation? The new madam will pay those kids 25,000 and those kids will not have a home again. The home will belong to the new madam. Do you get what I'm saying? The new madam becomes the new owner of this property. Your kids don't have a property to live in. And don't forget, in most instances, the amount which is remaining to be shared becomes much less than the 275 because we've got administration costs, which are executors' fees, we've got the master's fees, we've got the advertisement fees. You get what I'm saying? So sometimes it can happen that the 25 grand has to go and pay these other debts. Then what is left is 250. What happens to the 250? It is given to the new madam, which means that the new madam is the full owner of the property. And then, the kids have to now go. Or the new madam can even decide, it's in Bandigazele 25, then they go their separate ways. Now, often at this stage, the kids are very confused. And they don't understand how is it that a property that belonged to their own flesh and blood can move and be owned and be controlled by a new madam that they've got nothing to do with. It is because of the absence of a will. It is because their parents never left them anything. Their parents never left them anything. If they wanted to leave them anything, they would have drafted a will. But they allowed for the law to take its course and decide on its own what should happen to their things. Do you see the effects of you saying, I will not draft it? It's not necessary. Do you see it? Because often people say, no, it's not necessary because obviously the kids that I have are the ones that will benefit. Hey, if this is how you are thinking, you are in trouble. Your kids are in trouble, in fact, because by then you will not be there. They will be on their own. Do you see why I say a will is one of those that we often say is not up for discussion? This one you have got to include in your estate planning is a must. And so about the second thing, I'm not going to dwell too much on it, and the reason is because we had a discussion about this. And it's still important to have a discussion about it. But like I said, I'm not going to dwell too much on it. This one is the life policy. The purpose of a life policy. If you have a house and you have a mortgage and you don't have a policy in place, I don't know what's the plan. If you don't have a cover for that property and you don't have a life policy, I don't know what your mission is. Really, I don't know what your mission is, and this is something we encounter to this day. Guys, it happens that you take a mortgage at a different bank, right? And they allow you to have a policy elsewhere. Majutologuti, this person decided to go and cancel that policy. I don't understand. The reasoning is not really, I'm not understanding. When you pass away, you do know that this property still needs to be paid for, right? And now you are raising kids. You are canceling a policy. Who is going to pay for that house? Who's going to continue with the monthly payments? Are you expecting the kids to be the ones to continue with the monthly payments? What's the plan? I really struggle to understand this one, and I seriously don't understand it. Because remember, a policy is money that you, number one, don't have right now, but which could be useful when you have passed. Useful for a number of reasons. Number one, useful to cover outstanding debts such as your mortgage. Because you know the people you're going to leave behind cannot, even if they wanted to, cannot continue paying for that house. They cannot. Even if they want to, if they have the desire, they cannot. The second reason you will take out such a policy is simply because it has to support your family. Not to make them rich, it has to support them. If you know what support is in terms of maintenance, you know that it's money that is received on a month-to-month basis. It means that they are not paying for the monthly needs of this person. The second thing or reason why you take out a policy is so that it can support your family, which means you pay something towards your family's upkeep on a month-to-month basis. You get what I'm saying? Not for you to give it to them to be rich. So this is another problem we have. Because manje, you make kids who are 19 and 20 millionaires. You have now a policy. You make kids who are 19, 20, 21 millionaires to do what? To do what with the money? The money is meant to support them. It is meant to play your role as a parent. It is meant to cover your absence. You never had millions that you were showering to these kids on a month-to-month basis, or in fact, on a once-off basis here and there. You made sure you gave them money on a month-to-month basis based on their needs. Why are you now suddenly changing the life policy to make them rich overnight? What are you trying to do? What are you saying to a 19-year-old when you give them R1 million cash on hand in their bank account? What are you trying to do? You'll find that these kids now start experimenting on things that they don't even know, they've never thought about, because they've suddenly become millionaires, whereas they've never even had, 5,000 rand, or they've never even worked for any money. You make them millionaires overnight. You're sabotaging your whole family. It should work for them. Hence, I always say, do your research on these policies. I know at times we are told, just take this policy, you'll need it for this, and we never really get to understand, okay, this one is really useful in this manner, and this is why or how I should be actually, structuring it. And so sometimes we just take these things and we do see that they're important, but we don't really know the role these things should be playing, particularly policies. So a life policy, I'm telling you now, you can also do your research. It's not meant to make people rich overnight. It's meant to ensure you can support them continuously. You want kids to get to a certain point in life and, they can be able to take care of themselves. Some of those kids you're currently paying university fees for on a month-to-month basis. Now, when you give them R1 million, do you think that they're going to pay ahead of time for their studies? We've seen here how many kids have cried and said, I was meant to take this money and get educated, but unfortunately I spent it. And I don't blame them. They are young. What do they know about R1 million? What do they know about, controlling 2 million for that matter? Now, this is where the next thing comes in, which we call a trust. Now, a trust is one of those that I say is critical as part of your estate planning, right? Very critical for you to consider. But unlike a will, this one is a bit optional. Depends on your circumstances and what plans you have for your future, and what you have in mind. So sometimes with this one, you don't necessarily have to have it, but it's critical to consider, i.e., when you have children under the age of 18 and you have got this humongous life policy that you think should be taking care of these kids as soon as you pass away. Remember, if you now leave it in the form of a policy in the names of those children, where is it going? Do you remember what we talked about? It is going directly to the government guardians fund. That's where now the things are going to be dealt with differently. Whereas if you create something such as a trust, now it's going to a structure that has been created specifically by you, that has been tailor-made specifically for your family, that will ensure the amount of money you've left behind goes to your kids the way you want it to. If you know that your kids survive on 20,000 Rand a month, you then will say, no, let them get 20 grand a month. These are things or, options you will not have available if you allow the money to just go anywhere else. Thank you guys for the roses. You get what I'm saying? These are things you will not be able to control. But if you have a trust, that's the best platform, because you're going to state exactly, you even stipulate ages, what needs to happen, when and how. You are in control, right? You just need someone to administer now to ensure that exactly what you've stated happens. That's why I say it's critical for you to think about and consider. Because if you don't, then it's difficult to have control of the money you have left behind. And trust me, the money becomes difficult to access. It becomes, that is why to this day, if you do your research, you'll find that funds such as the Government Guardians Fund have got billions of rands still sitting there. You go to your, pension funds, there's billions sitting there. There's a number of reasons why there are billions unclaimed sitting there. It is because things like this happen. Money can't be paid to the kids. It's directly paid there, the Government Guardians Fund. The family is sitting here confused. They don't even know where to start. They're even struggling. Then they decide to just let it go. They decide to just let it go, and then the money sits there. Whereas your family needs this money. So you need to think about a trust right now as you are alive, and see whether you can't do it right now, and the benefits of you doing it right now, and also the benefits of you doing it after. You get what I'm saying? I'm just gonna mention two things. We've got two different types of trusts. We've got the one that you establish and it comes into operation right now when you're still alive. And then we have this one that only comes into operation when you have time, when you've passed away. The one which you have or will have, or your estate will have when you have passed away, is, I often say, is the most, it's the cheapest, but it's the most difficult one. Why do I say this? Because before we even do anything about that particular trust, we start where? We start with the administration of the estate. Before we do anything and move any monies there, before we start with the administration of the estate. Now, during this time, we can't give those kids monies. We need to get to a certain point before we can be allowed to give out the monies. So when you have young children or children who need transport money, who need school fees, who need this and that, it's not ideal to have monies that are stuck somewhere that cannot be paid. It is not ideal. it may make a bit of sense for you to have this vehicle established right now so that there is nothing holding the process, so that at least it will operate. When you have a trust right now, for example, and you pass away tomorrow, in terms of the trust, we're going to continue as per normal. As much as you've passed away, we're going to continue as per normal. And if after your death things were meant to change, we're just going to go to the terms and conditions and look at what's supposed to be happening, and we're just going to do that. That's it. That we're just going to continue as if nothing has happened. We don't have to be reporting anywhere else. We just continue, which means that there's no money stuck somewhere or frozen, or kids can't get access to it. They have to wait for something to happen or for the process of administration to be completed. So it's something that you need to think about and consider. And there are other reasons why sometimes when you're sitting down with the person who's planning, they're going to say you might want to think about a trust. Forget about the fact that you don't have minor children. At times, your estate will be extremely high, and it will not be a good idea for you to die whilst everything is in your name, because it is extremely humongous, which means that it will be taxed a lot as soon as something happens to you. So it is a conversation you need to sit down with a professional with and discuss. Do not take blanket approaches. Do not take blanket advice. If I've ever said that you must have this, I am also wrong, because it doesn't make sense for you to just say, by hearing what I'm saying here, that it's not going to work for me. You have got to go assess your circumstances, make a decision based on information that has been expanded to you. And plus, there are things that we don't really delve into when we're having these discussions, because this is just a discussion. It is not a form of advice to you. Whereas an estate plan is an advice going to you by a professional, right? So that you can make then the right choices based on what you want for your family when you have passed. This brings me to the end of this discussion period. I hope I have made sense. I tried.